Like many of you guys, I grew up on Audis. One of my very first memories of an Audi was this C3 Audi 100 event that me and my dad went to go look at this car auction when I was like 9 or 10 years old. It was gray with a light colored velour interior. I remember it so vividly and how cool it looked at the time. When I got a little bit older, we got an Audi A6 2.6 Quattro, deep purple metallic with a gray S-line interior. And us, the whole family, me and my sister and my brother in the backseat, took that car to the south of France, to Italy, to Switzerland, through Austria and Germany one summer. So I have many fond memories of that car, remembering it from my childhood. And then when I got a little bit older, we got an Audi A6 1.8T Avant, the C5 body style. It was white, it looked cool, it looked modern and sleek. And me and my dad took that car several times to the south of France. And then when I got old enough to get my own car, one of my first, nice cars was a C5 Audi A6 1.8T Avant. And then a little bit later, I got a B8 A4 TDI Avant. And after that, I traded that for a B9 A4 1.4 TFSI Avant. And then my current daily driver is an Audi E-Tron 55 that you guys have probably seen here on the channel. So for me and for a lot of you people out there, this badge means something. And in today's video, we're going to find out if the Q4 E-Tron is more than just, a closely related cousin to the ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq, because they're all built on the same MEB platform. Or is this a proper E-Tron? So guys, find out. Hit the thumbs up down below, subscribe to the channel, kick that notification bell, for more upcoming cool videos I have on this channel. Today's video is sponsored by Autodoc. Autodoc is an online car and motorcycle parts store that delivers parts to 26 countries for just about every make and model out there. I'm going to link their web store in the description box down below. Check them out for very low prices, or even better, download their mobile app that is both easy to use and offers even better prices than their web store. So if you're looking for car parts, suspension parts, brakes, or whatever, check out Autodoc. The Q4 E-Tron is built on the MEB platform, and as I said in the intro, it is very closely related to the Skoda Enyaq and the Volkswagen ID4. It basically shares the same exterior and interior dimensions, but it wears an Audi suit. And of the three, I think by far and easily this is the best looking. The Skoda Enyaq, I'm not a huge fan of the exterior styling of that car. The ID4 looks much better in my opinion, but in profile it looks kind of minivan-ish. This does not. This looks like an SUV. This looks like an Audi. It has that sleek styling, and this is where, the engineering and the money has gone into with the exterior, because it looks like a baby big E-Tron. I don't know what we're going to call the big E-Tron. We're going to call it the big E-Tron from now on, but this looks like a baby version of that car, and in many ways it's even more sleeker and futuristic and modern. I'm a huge fan of the design of this car, and even this one on 19-inch wheels, I think it looks elegant and perfect. You don't need 20s or 21-inch wheel on every car out there. And even, the Audi grille works perfect on this car. Yes, it doesn't need a grille, but that is the distinct face of Audi that everybody knows. Let's start with what I do like. So first off, the interior feels roomy and spacious, and it's also very practical. I mean, there's no lacking in volume in here. It feels almost as big as the big E-Tron, and that is impressive because the footprint of this car is quite a bit smaller. Even the trunk is almost as big as in the ID4. I mean, there's a small difference, and the difference is negligible. I mean, it's quite nice actually. And then you have these seats which are comfortable, and though they don't look the sportiest, they're actually quite supportive with decent side bolstering. You also sit higher than you would in the ID4 and the Enyaq, so this feels like an SUV while driving, and those cars feel more like a minivan. Then you have the switchgear in here, which is top of the shelf Audi. It looks nice, it feels nice, it sounds nice, it's high quality. The HVAC system is lifted right out of the e-tron GT, so it's a physical buttoned HVAC system. Yeah, a physical button HVAC system. I mean, thank you so much, Audi. This is awesome. It's a pleasure to use. I can't remember the last time I had pleasure using the HVAC system. And then lastly, I actually like the steering wheel mounted buttons, which at first glance I thought were touch capacitive when I made my announcement video, or my reaction video to the announcement, the launch of this car. They are actually physical buttons, though they're not individual buttons. They're one button with like a touch panel behind that senses which button you are touching. They look cool, and the button layout is identical to the other Audis with the physical layout. So I mean, functionality is top notch, though it's not as good. Let me explain. So the volume control here on the right side, where you have plus, which is up, and minus, which is down. Applause, Audi. That's the way to do it. I'm looking at you, Volkswagen, where you do it differently. I don't understand why. But you have the mute button in the middle. So when I'm driving and you can't, there's no, physical border here. It's just a flat panel. Sometimes while not looking at the steering wheel, which that's why you have steering wheel mounted buttons, I press the mute button. I've done that many times. I did it like 5 times yesterday. It's not the end of the world, but it is a bit annoying. But you can also just go like that. You can like swipe gesture up and down, lets you control the volume. You also have this thing down here, which is fine. I'm not a huge fan of. I wish it was closer. Then that would be easier to use. And yeah, I said that was lastly. But lastly, I find the interior design nice. It looks like an Audi. It feels and looks much more distinct and different to the ID4 and the Enyaq, where those interiors, feel related. This feels like a whole different interior. Then let's move over to what I don't like. And first off, this steering wheel is just stupid. It looks stupid. It's stupid to use. It's square on the top and bottom and round on the sides. Yes, it is a squircle. I mean, do Audi have this steering wheel in any other car? Just give me a normal Audi steering wheel, please. At least give me an option. I would gladly pay 5,000 kroners for a normal steering wheel. And then you have the Audi logo here, which is printed on. It looks stupid. It looks cheap. I don't understand. And then, talking about cheap, the rest of the interior has a lot of cheap materials. So you have it where you expect it, down low in the cabin here, on the center tunnel, on the doors. But where you don't expect cheap materials in an Audi are high up in the cabin. On the doors, shoulder level, you have cheap plastic that looks cheap and feels cheap. I wish Audi would just spend a little bit more money. I would gladly pay 10,000 kroners more to have nice materials on the door. I don't understand why, because Audi are known for high quality interiors. I criticized the ID4 for having a cheap interior from a brand that is known for nice interiors in the non-premium segment. Audi built their whole brand the past 20 years, or a lot of its brand, on having the highest quality interior in the class with the nicest fit and finish. This doesn't have the nicest interior in this class. I think the Skoda Enyaq has a nicer interior, better put together, nicer materials, and also the Volvo XC40, the Polestar 2, even the Mustang Mach-E has nicer materials, though the Mach-E doesn't have the Audi switchgear, so it's hard, crowning a winner in between those. The Mustang Mach-E has a nicer dashboard, material-wise, and also the doors. I don't understand what Audi did here and why they did what they did. So, I mean, that is disappointing. This car here is the 40 E-Tron. It sits smack in the middle in the E-Tron lineup. It kicks off with the 35 E-Tron, which has a rear electric motor, 170 horsepower, does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 9 seconds. Comes with the small battery pack, which is 58 kilowatt hours net, and has a WLTP range of 330 to 340 kilometers and starts at 400,000 kroners. Then you have this, the 40 E-Tron, bumps power to 204 horsepower. This does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 8.5 seconds and comes with the big battery pack, 77 kilowatt hours, net. It now has a WLTP range of 510 to 540 kilometers and starts at 446,000 kroners. Then you have the big dog, the 50 E-Tron Quattro, which has two electric motors, the same as this on the rear axle, but has a front motor to offer that extra horsepower and works when you're accelerating. So most of the time you're driving, it's only a rear wheel drive to save that juice. That car has 299 horsepower, does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 6.2 seconds, comes with the same battery pack as this, but since it has, the dual electric motors, it only has a WLTP range of around 470 to 480 kilometers and starts at 484,000 kroners. Okay, excuse me. Oh, hi Skoda Enyaq. Your starting prices are the same? Oh, interesting. Yes, but your optional equipment is much cheaper. So you're saying that I could get a similar spec to this car specifically is 577,000 kroners. Your car, which would be the 80 with rear wheel drive, the IV80 with the same equipment level, would be 511,000 kroners? Good to know. Okay, thank you very much. Interesting. Oh, okay. Hello? Oh, Volkswagen ID4. You are even cheaper. Oh, you're like about equivalently equipped, about 100,000 kroners cheaper than the Q4. You could get the GTX, the top dog, the same as the 50 E-Tron Quattro for 550,000 full spec. Ooh, yeah. I think this in the 50 Quattro fully spec would be like 650 plus. Okay, good to know. Before we take the Q4 E-Tron out on the road, I just want to quickly talk about and show you the infotainment system and some of the tech. If you guys want a full in-depth review and tour of Audi's Touch MMI, I do have a link in the description box down below from, well, another E-Tron. You know, this is the same as you would find in other Audis. So this car has keyless go, keyless entry, so you just put your foot on the brake while sitting in the driver's seat with the key in your pocket and the ignition will turn on. So this car has the virtual cockpit. Though it's smaller in this car, it's 10 inches versus 12 inches in the bigger cars, and then you have the buttons here on the steering wheel. So I mean, this is very familiar. It's super easy to use. I like it a lot. And then you can switch between, you know, the different views here by pressing the button on the side there. You can see we're switching between the map, the trip computer, you know, your audio, your phone. And then you can also zoom in and out with this button here, up and down. This is also a touchpad, so you can just swipe like that, and you can also just swipe like that, or that way. So it's pretty nice. I mean, it functions similar to the cars with the, you know, the separated buttons. It works almost as good. It's not as good, but I mean, it's not as a big compromise as I thought it would be. And then you have the volume here on this side where you can go up and down, which is welcome. And then you have the mute button there, but you can also swipe like that, which is very, very nice. So I mean, this screen is not as bright, it's not as contrasty as the big screens, but I mean, it is pretty nice, especially with the maps view here in the middle. And then you have this screen, which is, I think this is the same 12, it may be 11, but I think it's the same 12 inch you would find in the big E-Tron. And you have your shortcuts here on the side. You have your home, you have your radio, you have your media, you have your favorites, and then you also have your maps. It's super easy to use, super intuitive, going into the menus there. I mean, it's just super easily laid out. One thing that's cumbersome with the big E-Tron is that you have to go into car, and then you have to go into charging, and then you have to go to charging here to find your battery percentage. But in the big E-Tron, you have a screen below here, which is your HVAC screen, but you can make a shortcut for that button, so you just press one button. What they've done in this car, they have now updated the infotainment system screen here, the virtual cockpit, and they have now included your battery percentage there. That is so nice. This car does not have head-up display. I'm not sure if you can get head-up display in this model like you can in the ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq. I'm not the hugest fan of head-up display either way. I mean, this display is so good. You have all the information you need. Look at this, especially for a car geek like me. So this is what I use while taking the car on a long trip. So you have your consumption, you have your average speed, you have your time, you have your distance, you have outside temperature, you have the time, you have battery percentage. What more do you need? And you can even get your maps here if you want. I mean, it's super good. It's so good. And then you have the HVAC system here, as I said, which is, it's a buttoned HVAC system. And I know I keep saying buttoned. I'm just going to say buttoned because, yeah, buttoned. I like that. It's an HVAC system with buttons. What more can I say? Yeah, it's super nice. Stepping up to the Q4 E-Tron, I'm like, yeah, this looks pretty nice. I like the exterior. And then I get a little bit closer, I grab the door, and the door has that quality Audi feel. It just feels solid. And then I step into the interior, and my first impression is like, yeah, this is nice. Not as nice as the big e-tron, but this looks nice. But then upon closer inspection, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny as an Audi should, in my opinion. The interior just isn't up to Audi standards in a lot of places. In some places it is, but in other places it's a disappointment. And then you start comparing the pricing with the Enyaq and the ID4, and you're like, this is more expensive. Not a little, but it is a lot more expensive. So you start scratching your head, and then you take the car out on the road hoping it will change your mind, but immediately you're disappointed. Because this car has more road noise than the ID4, than the Enyaq, and I think it actually has more road noise than the ID3s I've driven. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But then you start scratching your head a little bit more, and you start thinking and contemplating, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. This is more expensive. Audi sits higher in Volkswagen Group's brand hierarchy. How could this be the case? And then you start analyzing, and you're like, the GTX I drove had 21-inch wheels. The Enyaq I drove had 21-inch wheels. The ID4 before that had 20-inch wheels. This has 19-inch wheels. So every bone in your body is telling you that this is more expensive, this is more premium, it sits above those other two cars, it has smaller wheels. It can't be more noisy. You start, not trusting your ears, but then you come back into reality and you're like, yes, they are more noisy. And then you step out of the car, and then you read the sidewall and you read Bridgestone. Yeah. So in my experience, I've worked with wheels and tires for like 4 or 5 years. I have a lot of experience with tires. I just want to get that out of the way. But also I have experience with Bridgestones. My A4, my B9 had Bridgestones. They were noisy. My e-tron has Bridgestones. They are more noisy than the Sportback I drove last year, which was on 21-inch wheels. Mine's on 20s, which had Continental tires. So from my own experience, and now this, Bridgestone tires are more noisy than Continentals, than Michelins, than Nokians, than Pirellis. So you go to the internet, and then you find the sound rating, and you find out that these are more noisy than the Pirellis that were on the GTX, that were on the Enyaq, than the Hankook Ventuses that were on the ID4 before that. And you're pretty confident that the reason this is more noisy is due to the tires. So if you're going to buy a Q4, and I know this was a little bit of a rant and a setup, but if you're going to buy a Q4, don't get it on the Bridgestones if you care about noise. I mean, I don't care. If they say you can't, just walk away, buy another car. That's what I would do. You're not going to pay 650,000 kroners for a fully spec'd 50 Quattro and have it more noisy than an ID4 that costs 350,000 kroners. I mean, I wouldn't accept that. But that aside, it actually feels like an Audi to drive. Steering feels like an Audi. You have this more commanding, higher driving position than you have in the ID4 and the Enyaq. And as I said, shutting the door, it feels quality. It's just some of the materials in here don't look and don't feel quality, but the rest, it feels solid. There's more suspension travel in this than in the ID4 I drove, so it just drives more like an Audi. It feels like an Audi. It just doesn't look, and to the touch it just isn't like an Audi many places in the interior, but it redeems itself. It's better to drive, it's more comfortable, it feels more solid, it feels like an Audi compared to the GTX or the ID4 and the Enyaq. This ended up being much more difficult than I initially thought it was going to be. So at the beginning of the video, I asked two questions. Question number one, is the Q4 E-Tron a proper Audi? And question number two, is it any better than the Skoda Enyaq or the Volkswagen ID4 that it shares a platform with and is closely related to? Well, I'm going to answer question number one first. Is the Q4 E-Tron a proper Audi? And the short answer is yes, it is a proper Audi, but it's much more Audi A1 or Audi A3 than it is Audi A4 or Audi A6. And that kind of makes sense because the Audi A1 shares a platform with the Volkswagen Polo and the Skoda Fabia. The Audi A3 shares a platform with the Volkswagen Golf and the Skoda Octavia. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. But this is much more expensive than an A1 or an A3 or any of those other cars. So I was expecting a little bit more in the interior department, but it still looks like an Audi, it drives like an Audi, it feels like an Audi, it smells like an Audi, it has Audi seats, Audi switchgear. It has its own interior that is completely different and separate to the Volkswagen ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq. I'm just a bit disappointed about some of the materials in the interior, and I would gladly pay a little bit more money to get a proper premium interior. So yes, it is still a proper Audi. And then we have question number two, is it any better than the Skoda Enyaq or Volkswagen ID4? So I think it's quite clear it is better than the Volkswagen ID4. If you've seen any of my videos, I think the ID4 is a good car. It's comfortable, it's quiet, it's spacious, it's cheap, it has great efficiency, charges relatively fast. I mean, it's a great EV. I'm just not a huge fan of the super cheap and super simple interior or any of the infotainment system. I think it's one of the worst infotainment system in 2021 and also one of the cheapest feeling interiors. I would gladly pay the extra money because I'm complaining about the cheap materials in this interior. It's still miles better than what you find in the ID4, and also the infotainment system alone makes this better. So I mean, that's out of the equation. It looks better, it drives better, it smells better, it sounds better, it has a better infotainment system, it has a better interior. Yes, it's more expensive, but I would rather, you know, buy this car at with less equipment than the equivalent ID4. But then you have the Skoda Enyaq, and this is much more difficult because first off, they have the same starting price, and the Enyaq has a nicer interior. It has a nicer interior, but it doesn't have the Audi switchgear. It doesn't have the Audi infotainment system. Yes, the central screen in the Enyaq is better than what you would find in the ID4. But it also has the digital gauge cluster for the driver. It's just lacking in everything, though I don't mind that in isolation. Compared to this is so much better. You also sit higher here. It also looks much better, and it feels like an Audi, but I don't know if that can justify the big price difference. As I said, this car is 577,000 kroners. The equivalent Enyaq is 511,000 kroners. Is it worth more than 10% in a price hop? I don't know. I think that's hard. This is not a cop-out. Usually I like to give you guys a definite answer at the end of the videos, but I don't know, and that's up to you guys. Would I really don't know. I don't know. I would have to drive them back to back to back to back to really find out which one I would spend my money on. But I do like the exterior of this better, and I do think it drives a little bit better, but it's also more expensive. I don't know, guys. So guys, let me know down below, which one would you choose, the Volkswagen ID4, the Skoda Enyaq, or the Audi Q4 E-Tron. So guys, Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, guys, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.